But we're very happy that the mayor has agreed to speak to us today. As you know, seniors constitute a large demographic within the city of Sudbury. We have more seniors population-wise, percentage-wise, than any other Ontario city, with the exception perhaps of Elliott Lake. But there's more of us, and why are there more of us here? People wonder, why do we have so many seniors in Sudbury? Well, there's a couple of reasons, because we live longer, and the other reason is, of course, we have many of our young people who leave town, so as a result there's a higher percentage of us. And we have a lot of expertise, a lot of knowledge, a lot of history. When you add all our ages together, well, it would come to quite a sum. But we've been advocating over the years that there's so many of us that have had experiences living not only in Sudbury but in other parts of the country, that we're always willing to contribute to Sudbury to make it a better place to live. We already know it's a great place to live, but there's always room for improvement. There's always things happening in other communities that we can emulate, that we can adopt, and there's other communities that are really quite envious of us. And we're just talking to the mayor there about the facts that we have 330 lakes. How many other cities in Canada can say that they have water resources like we have here? And we have basically a pretty friendly community too, except at some council meetings. But I thought someone would appreciate that. No, okay. You can't win them all, Paul. No? Anyway, so we're underway. We got to remind you that each table has the opportunity to ask a question. So decide amongst yourselves what question you would like to have the mayor answer. And Valerie Lefebvre, who's our Secretary Treasurer, will collect those questions and we'll make sure there's no duplicates. And then we'll have the opportunity. But right now the mayor does have places to go, things to do. So we'd like to introduce him at this present time. His Worship, Paul Lefebvre.
Thank you very much, John. So thank you everyone for being here. My pleasure. John asked me I wanted to attend a number of months ago, and I said sure I would. And so before I start, I just want to thank John for his leadership, and I know you've been involved with the CARP group and many other groups in town, John. And I know you're a strong advocate, so I'm very pleased that we could have a chat at lunch, and certainly be here to address the members of CARP and our seniors here in the city of Greater Sudbury. So as was said, June is Seniors Month in Greater Sudbury. Actually, I think next week I'm doing the proclamation. So proclaiming June 2023 Seniors Month in the city of Greater Sudbury. But we all know that seniors' issues and advocacy and needs are all year long. It's just not one month a year. Certainly accessibility considerations, affordable housing for seniors, recreation opportunities, and basically quality of life. And I know CARP has been a very strong voice for all of those things. The current council, so as we were elected, there was an election, as you all know, back in October, and we were sworn in at the end of November. And so I've only been in the job for about 7 months, almost going on 8, and really enjoying it. But I find that, as I was explaining to the folks at the table, every half hour I change subjects. Right, I'll deal with seniors, and I was dealing with roads, and I'll deal with snow plowing, and then we'll deal with the pools, and then we'll deal with an arena, and then I was doing with childcare. So it changes on a half-hour basis. Every meeting just jumps from one to the other. So it's never boring, as you can imagine. It's always interesting. There's always something different happening. But just focusing on certainly seniors month here, and certainly addressing CARP members. So the current council has a number of priorities that reflect specifically what we've heard from older adults and retired persons across our community. One thing I'm proud to say is that we're offering free transit service to seniors 65 and older every Tuesday for the month of June. That's a pilot project. Is that something that we can expand all year round, or was that going to increase the use? It's to encourage people that maybe don't have a vehicle to be able to be more comfortable on the transit, as well as maybe somebody that has a vehicle that's maybe thinking of not using their vehicle or trading it in, or basically selling it, saying, well, what does this bus look like? I've never used the bus before. Is it safe? Should I try it? And so basically at no cost you can go and try out the bus service. We're also certainly upgrading walking and cycling infrastructure to make it easier and safer to go around in an active manner. So active lifestyle is very important as well. So a lot of investments going in there. As John was saying, we have 330 lakes, lots of trails. So as we try to attract young and not as young folks to our city, active lifestyle is very important, right? So what can we do to have more trails, be able to walk around in a safe way as well? So those are things that are top of mind. There's lots of investments going in there, and there's more coming. We also know that the rising cost of living is a challenge for certainly our seniors. Certainly the seniors that are on a fixed income, and that have their own homes, and sometimes in an apartment, certainly, but the ones that do have, that live in their own homes, that the cost of hydro, cost of water, cost of taxes increases. And at the end of the day, we talk about seniors housing. Well, the longer we can have folks living in their homes, the better it is for all, even for everybody. So what can we do as a municipality to do that? And that's why in the last budget, that was kind of my first budget, and I want to say that I'm here with Mike Parent, as John introduced him, from Ward 5. He wants to certainly hear what the questions are, so I'll try to keep my remarks to about 10 minutes and entertain all the questions we got. But we increased the senior tax assisted amount. So basically that's what it is. If there is increases to your property taxes, and if you're in a certain income bracket, certainly a lower income bracket, there is a program to give you a supplement and to make sure that your taxes don't go up. So we increased that amount from $250 to $400, and now in the next budget we'll be looking at how do we make that permanent to make sure that it goes up with inflation. So every time there is an increase, seniors that are living in their own homes, that we want them to live as long as they can in their own homes, that are not affected by the property tax increases. The other municipalities do a different program. Some basically it's a deferral program, meaning that we're not paying the taxes or we're not paying the increases, but when we sell it, it's going to be added on to the tab. We're actually giving you guys this population a grant, basically right off the top. So it's still up for consideration as how we can improve the system, right? But certainly that is top of mind of how we can keep our seniors longer in their homes as well. Now, this is one of the things that I promised that I would do in the last election was to go to every ward and have town halls. And so even though, actually I've been in this one, and at the Northbury, I think this is my 4th time in 6 months, and not with the wards, but with different groups, the Rotary group that I've addressed, and now here with the CARP group. And I've done 8 wards. Last night I was in the Minnow Lake area, and so trying to hear from different areas of the city. And that's never been done before. It's a lot, right? Standing up and certainly people asking you questions. We had to change the format as well for the beginning. I went to Coniston at first, and the questions were from the crowd. It went well, and it was well received. And the second one, unfortunately, somebody that had another agenda grabbed the microphone and didn't want to leave the microphone. So anybody else's questions were, so it was just and it wasn't a very fruitful and very, a good format that people could ask their questions, because he got very tense. And I said, no what, and the staff got a bit very concerned. So I said, no what, the next time, so what format that we do is we write questions down, and then there's somebody that asks the questions to me. And then I stay there right till the end, and I stay after it. If anybody wants to come and talk to me personally, I stay. Like last night, we finished at 8. I was there till 9:15, 9 o'clock, and I was out of there by about 9:15. Actually, John walked me out. John was my bodyguard, and he walked me out of that area. Maybe a few last things. So, working this iteration of council, one of the things during the elections, when he asked me, he says, well, what are the first things that you will do? Right? What do you think needs to happen? He said, well, we need to have a council that works together. we have a council that is divided, that doesn't work together, nothing happens. Staff that don't have the right direction to move forward, right? They're always on eggshells saying, well, if that councillor talks to me, do I say that to the mayor? Do I don't say that to the mayor? So it was very disjointed. It was very hard to move anything forward in the previous iteration of council. That's what I've been told. For me, one of the first things was to meet with all the councillors personally on a one-on-one. I did that in the first 2 weeks after I was elected, to have that cohesion and saying, listen, we won't agree on everything. Even today, you'll ask me questions, and you may not like my answer, but I'm being as honest as I can, right? And that's my promise to the folks of Sudbury, of Greater Sudbury, saying, you may not like what I do, but this is what I campaigned on, and these are the values that I want to bring forward. And we disagree, but that's, and at the end of the day, I listen and say, well, can I change, right? Can I change that? And again, is that true to my direction in what I promised during the campaign as well? So I'm very optimistic about the state of our city. I don't want to get too much into the details. You may have heard me talk about certainly the mining sector and what's going on, the revolution on the electric battery vehicle transition. And Sudbury we're at the forefront of that, and I'll tell you why. Is that as we go deeper underground in here, because in the city of Greater Sudbury, because we have the wealth of that mineral wealth, basically the longer they were down there, they need more air, right? Because you have the pure air because there's still diesel fumes. So they're all changing their fleets from diesel engines to battery engines. So one of the first things I did as well when I was elected is I met with all the manufacturers of that mining equipment, because a lot of them are based here in Sudbury. The Epirocs, the Covateras, the Komatsus, and the Sandviks, and McLean's, and the list goes on and on. I met with all of them, and my first thing was, how can I help you? Because I know you'll be changing your fleet from diesel to battery electric. How can I make sure that those investments are made here in Sudbury? Because if they're not made here in Sudbury, they're not going to Timmins, they're not going to Hawaii or Val d'Or, they're going to the States. They're going to the United States, and that's a conversation, because these are international companies. So for me, it was to make sure that those investments, that capital is deployed here as they expand. And I know of 4 of them that are looking at doubling the size of their footprint here in the city of Greater Sudbury. So to me, I'm very excited about what that bodes for us. That means that's lots of jobs, right? And then there's opportunities for our youth. People say, well, why do you want to grow our city, Paul? Why do you want to grow it? Well, and I'll talk about the challenges before I take the question, but I'm talking about the opportunities and the challenges. We need to grow the population base in order to pay for that infrastructure that we have. It's very old infrastructure that we have, and as much as we tried to maintain it, it's very challenging. People don't realize we have 3,741 kilometers of road lanes in our city. 3,741. Of our water pipes, 800 kilometers. Of our wastewater pipes, another, I think around 700 kilometers of that. We have 14 arenas, the youngest of which is the Countryside Arena in 1991, that was last built. We have 5 pools. The youngest is the Armstrong Pool out in the valley, 1983. We have 13 libraries around. We have 24 fire stations, right? And so when you start to, and the parks, I haven't talked about the parks and basically the playgrounds that we have is all municipal infrastructure that we all pay for together. I always like to remind folks as well as the mayor also pays property taxes. People think they kind of forget that. I have to remind them I actually live here as well. My kids participate in sports and they go to school here. So as I said, certainly we have our challenges, and I really see our infrastructure a major challenge. How do we plan for that? How do we make a plan that is not just this year, but 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years from now? What does that infrastructure look like? What are those investments we need to do now? It's always frustrating for folks saying, well, I'm leaving for now, and I'm not leaving for 20 years ago. Well, that's what they said 20 years ago. I mean, look what we got, right? So that's not how I work. I'm saying we need a plan obviously for today, but as we build out as well. And I know another challenge that we're facing is certainly the opioid crisis. I'll give you a little last story. As you can see, I can go on and on. But when I was first elected in federal politics, one of the first things I did was to meet with the Canadian Mental Health Association. And at the time, for them, alcohol was the main issue. So this was 2015, 2016. Alcohol was the main issue that they wanted to create a spot where people can basically, it was a wet room that we could actually have alcohol, and basically so that they didn't have to steal it, and then they had a place to go. 5 years later, alcohol is not at all even on a topic of addictions. It's opioids. It's opioids, and the crisis is not only in Sudbury, it's around Northern Ontario, Southern Ontario, across Canada, across North America. And it's very challenging. People say, well, what's the strategy? Well, we have a local strategy, and if there's a question, I'll certainly address that as we go about that. Certainly, it has to deal with homelessness and having them housing and having those services, the wraparound services. But the challenge that we have is sometimes people in that population, and I say this often in all the town halls, I can give them my house with a fridge full of food, they still won't take it. They're not well enough to go there. But how do we not abandon them? How do we make sure that we keep going back and helping them out? And maybe I'll end up with the challenges as well, as certainly on our downtown. I believe in our downtown. I know there's people out there that don't. I believe that a city that has a beating heart, that is a thriving heart, or a thriving downtown, is a healthy city. And it's been challenging. That's why there's a lot of perception out there that we don't have a healthy city. It's a challenging city because our downtown is not well. So for me, how do we do that? How do we get businesses involved to try to invest? And it's challenging because some of them want to leave. They want to leave the downtown, right? They don't want to set up there. So as a city, how do we change that? And there's measures that we put in place. We're reviewing the downtown master plan. And so there's investments that need to happen from the city's point of view. But there's no easy fix. But my endeavor to you and certainly the people of Greater Sudbury is certainly doing my best to try to address those and working with council as well. So with that, I'm not sure what time we got, John, but it's 1:05. I got another event at 2, so I'll say 1:35, 1:40, and then I'll sprint to my next event. And I know the media they want to talk to you, but again, very happy to be here and happy to engage. And thank you, and I'll start taking questions.
Thank you very much. And for you coming out today, we know that you're just a young fella, but
well,
we are.
Is it 50 or 55?
Well, actually, our leader, Moses Zamer, announced at the last general meeting that there's no age limit now
There you go.
on joining CARP.
Wow. So where's my form?
So you are,
where's my form?
for being here, we are going to arrange that you're going to get a membership in CARP and the Zoomer magazine.
Thank you. There you go.
It's an invaluable gift, really. And we want to remind you to don't forget to fill in the questionnaire. And there's a couple of topics that were sort of related to the questionnaire that have come in. One that's mentioned a couple of times here, and I know you've heard it at some of the board meetings, and that's table 12 suggested tear down the old general hospital, but another table said, what is the future plans for the old general hospital? It's derelict and an eyesore in a lovely part of the city. Will the city buy it? I guess that's two questions.
So yes, it is. Listen, I drive by the old hospital on a daily basis. So it's I see it all the time, right? One of the first things, again, I did was to talk to the owner as soon as I was elected to say, what's the plan? Because if there is no plan, this has to, well, first of all, it has to come down. And it has to be a plan because he owns it, right? It's private property, right? So I am optimistic. However, that something will happen. That being said, I'm also a realist that if it doesn't happen soon, the city needs to move and do something. So that's my covering to you, okay? So something has to happen. That's been my direction to that owner. And I've seen the plans. It's great. You can have plans, but if you don't, there's no results. Plans is that, So basically, move forward with something. If not, council sooner rather than later. So why in my term as mayor, something will happen. Okay.
Now we know that the mayor mentioned that the city is going to give free bus rides for seniors on Tuesdays. I don't know how my son found out about that, he lives in Oakville. And he sent me a message and said, Oakville's doing free bus rides for all seniors all the time. Not only that, they're doing it for young people up to the age of 20. I don't know how they can do that possibly, but it's interesting. Is there a possibility of looking into what other cities, one of the advantages, we don't like our kids leaving town, it's true, right? But when they do go out there, they send back some interesting ideas. So this one comes from Oakville, which is my hometown, by the way. And it's interesting. I don't know how they're doing it, how they're paying for it, but maybe it's something to look at. What do you think?
Well, certainly, as I said in my opening remarks, it is a pilot project, right? Which is we tried it for the first time, and it is uptake, and there's a desire. That's why having these conversations with seniors groups is important to say, if we do this, there will be much more people using it, right? And how can we open this up? Our transit service it's huge. Think about the size of our city, right? And the transit, we actually go all the way to Onaping, Capriol, right? There is actually bus routes in Coniston. So it's very long roads that we provide services to, but at the same time, that's what it's there for, right? And for me, it's maybe, and I'll take the advantage to talk about this, is transit is one thing, but make sure that there's more density, right? So that people can build around the corridors, more multiplexes, more apartment buildings on the Regent, on LaSalle, that we can just not these single lot homes. We should be having 5, 6, 8, 12 apartment buildings all along those routes that creates that density that people then say, well, now I can use transit, it's right in front of my door, right? It's a challenging city. If you live far in the rural areas, great lifestyle, but don't expect the city to be able to give you your bus right there, and that's effective, right? But how do we create that hub to make sure that we have more density and that we're able to provide that transit service more effectively and there's more users? So, but again, more than happy to engage and to review that. Thank you.
One of the suggestions from CARP and also from Friendly to Seniors over the years was to have free senior bus service during off times, let's say from 9:30 to 4:30 or something like that, and on the weekends as well. Now, I understand also, someone mentioned to me that the provincial government also looks at ridership levels too, and there's some compensation, I believe, on ridership levels as well too. So that was our suggestion. We didn't know that Oakville was going to go for all the time. A major question here, it says, I'm not exactly sure about this, but our largest expense, I don't know if this is true or not, our largest expense is the police budget. It was increased by 6%. Why did you increase by 6% and not follow what City Council had suggested? I don't know if that's true or not.
No, I get that. No, that's a really good question. So basically, Council had directed every department, every group to be at 3.7% of an increase to their budget. So I became mayor, and we get to, there's all different, there's different committees, and as mayor, I'm allowed to sit on the police services board, and that's rare that happens, but I really I decided to take that opportunity to really understand how our police services are run, because they're very independent than council. However, the funding comes from us as taxpayers. So basically, going in and hearing from the police services and the police the demands and the challenges of even filling their obligations in the police services world has really changed. And I'll give you an example. Talk about the opioid crisis. So when there's somebody that's fallen ill and that's not well, and the ambulance is called, if the ambulance driver, the paramedic, doesn't feel safe, they call for backup for the police. Immediately, the police have to stop whatever they're doing, and that is their first call. They have to go there. And after that, they got to follow the ambulance all the way to the emergency department. And sometimes the ambulance cannot discharge that patient into the emergency because it's full, or there's not capacity. It takes a half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour. So we have an ambulance there with a police car there waiting to access services. So that means we have less police on the street responding to other calls. So the police cost is high. People don't realize this, but a third, so 34% of our tax dollars are going to what I call 911 services: fire, paramedic, and police. So that's a third of your tax bill, your municipal tax bill. People don't realize this. So like, wow, right? It's a bit of a shocker saying, wow, that's what it is. And so the police, yes, it was increased. We need, and then during the campaign, I heard this many times, we need more police officers. We want to see more police officers. They're not on the street. And certainly they've got so busy, they're not even doing kind of the community relations. They're trying hard to do that, but the more we can have them in the community as well, right, talking to our youth and talking to different groups, that goes a long way. We're even able to do that. And our world has changed. Our world has changed totally from what it was 10 years ago. Basically, the human trafficking, that was never a thing. That is now such a sad state of affairs, but that's almost a department we need to create here in Sudbury. The drugs flow from the south to the north, and basically the hub that we've become. also is a major challenge. And if we don't have enough police officers to deal with that, well, guess what? The more they will come, because we don't have anybody to address that. So that's why it was increased. And I have to be honest, I didn't expect, as coming in as mayor, that I would be increasing the police budget. That was not a thought that I had, but seeing the data and seeing what was going on, you know, I think that's it's an investment that we needed to do. So that's why there's an increase there.
This is sort of an appropriate question, I guess, now that we see the raging wildfires across the country, and perhaps we're not immune here in Sudbury. I know that many years ago, of course, it was hard to find a tree, but we now have, we now have urban forests. And are we in danger? There's a possibility that we could be in danger, and is that being looked at? But the other question is, and sort of, as we know in the media, there's a lot of angst over fire service, not only inside the city of Sudbury itself, but in all the outlying communities. A lot of concern and a lot of interesting meetings that have been held with some upset displayed at some of those meetings. But we spend a lot of money on fire services, but is the money keeping up? And are we really getting the service that we need? Because we hear that insurance rates can go up if we decrease fire service in certain areas. So there's a whole lot of topics related to the fire service, and we know we went to England to get an analysis of our fire situation, which I know we talked about last night at the Ward 11 meeting, when they want to move our fire station in Meadow Lake 2 kilometers away from the center of the area. So we're sort of puzzled. If that's an example of what the report is, how does that speak to the other sections of the report? But as mayor, do you have any comments on that?
Well, thank you, John. So yes, the report that John talks about was a station review. Where should be the stations reviewed in the city of Greater Sudbury, and what should be the best areas that they should be settled in. And that was before certainly I was mayor. That was the last council that asked for that, that got funding from the provincial government to do a review, and the contract was awarded to a firm out of England that does this on a regular basis, I'm told. So with that being said, that report came to us in one of our first meetings in December, and we pressed pause on it and said, wait a second here, I'm new to this, and a few other councillors as well. And at the same time, I said, well, it's great that you give us this report of these stations should be all moved around. How much is that going to cost us? I said, give me a budget, right? Because we can dream in Technicolor that we can have all new stations in all these areas. Who's going to pay for that? We have one taxpayer. That's us, right? So I said, how the heck are we able to afford this? So what does this look like? What is the cost of this? So that report of the costing is coming back to us at the end of the month, and we'll have a review of that. But as I said, right now we have 24 fire stations in the area, 4 in the core, as we call it, and a number in the outlying areas in our communities. So how do we ensure the level of service with the fire stations that we have? Now, one of the things is, as well as that people realize that, so there's a rating that what we call the fire underwriter service provides for each area. Wherever you live, you have a rating of where you live from a fire perspective, from 1 to 5. 1 is basically you have a permanent fire station nearby within 8 kilometers and a hydrant, and basically therefore they're able to respond to a fire. A 5 is basically you're not within 8 kilometers, and usually it's because it's a volunteer fire station, and if they need 15 volunteer firefighters to be able to at least 5 respond to a fire. That is what the fire underwriter service, and so what they do, the fire underwriter service, is that's where the insurance company take their data from, right? Because the insurance company doesn't know where you live and how close to a fire station. So basically that is across Canada, all the municipalities have access to that, to their surveys that they do, and then basically they have access to that data. Then insurance companies determine what is the fee I want to charge you for your insurance. And I tell folks shop around because my insurance just went up, and I shopped around and I saved a few $1,000s, right? So that's just what that's their market out there. That being said, community safety is top of mind. That's where I started from. It's about the safety of our citizens, right? And certainly the safety of our workers as well, our firefighters and our police officers that work on the line. what measures do we need to put in place as the city to make sure that they have a safe work environment as well. That being said, compiled with that is, what can we afford, right? How much is it going to cost us if we want to have the Cadillac of Cadillacs, as if I could use that term, right? What does that cost? And we provided just a good service, what does that cost? And that's up to us, certainly as council, to decide. And the people also say, wait a second here, you want to double my taxes, but I'll have a fire station at every 8-kilometer section? Maybe that's not what we want, right? Because the cost would just be astronomical. Then we need to have the human resources, the firefighters in those stations to do that as well. So where is that middle ground of providing the most adequate use and adequate safety in our community and be able to afford it as well? So that is top of mind. So, and I'll answer again your question from last night on the Middle Lake. Again, nothing has been decided. The report came to us, we're reviewing it, and as time goes on, on the 27th, we're gonna have the report, well, the week before, we're gonna have a report as to the costing of this. And at that point, council will be able to make a decision as to what do we merge together, what do we keep as a standalone, what we don't touch, what doesn't make any sense. So that's kind of what we'll be deciding after that to make sure, again, with the overarching theme of making sure that community safety is number one. And costing as well. Thank you.
So we had a couple of questions here with respect to roads. As I mentioned, Linda and I have 6 kids, and 4 of them are outside of town. And each time they come to town, they say, and we have a little business too, and when we have business associates that come to town, they all say the same thing. What's wrong with your roads? And of course, there's many reasons given, but nevertheless, the questions that we have here, and we know, it's sort of a 2-part question. We know that in the official plan, it says that we should be fixing our present roads before we build new roads. However, the other section of the bureaucracy, the transportation people, have a whole list of new roads they want to build. So the question many people put forward is, why aren't we fixing what we already have before we build anything new? We have something on the Kingsway, and we know they're resurfacing, but they're also adding extra lanes. Why the extra lanes? So people can go faster and get to point B from point A quicker and costing us more money? I don't know. That's one of the questions. Fix the roads, please. Why do road construction sites seem so unorganized, unsafe, lack of signage and fencing, unprofessional in the timeliness to completion? When are we going to fix the roads and those potholes that seem to get, we have one of our roads, I think it's Van Horn, is listed as in the top 10 in the province. I have a little toy car out in front of me, a little convertible. It's hard to drive it around now, because the roads are so rough. The thing is, I know my bones can't take it anymore. But so the roads are number 1 priority. And as mayor, only one voice on council, of course, but we have, and I worked for the bureaucracy for about 27 years, and I know that bureaucracy exists to exist. And they have different priorities sometimes, and they intend to influence council, unfortunately. But council has the ultimate authority, and we're wondering with respect to our roads, what does the mayor say to that?
Well, certainly, it's a major issue. Everywhere I go, certainly, my family members, right? Again, I drive the road too, right? People forget the mayor drives the same roads as everybody else. It's a major challenge, right? And I think basically, over the years, the amount of money that should have gone into the roads has not gone into the roads, it's gone to other things. So how do we recalibrate that, and how do we address that? So one of the things that you may have heard of, so we are going to a 2-year operating budget and a 4-year capital budget. So, and the reason why I want to go there, and council's behind me, is that as we plan out our road construction, often we just do one project at a time and we don't plan over, so then we do a part of a road. And then we'll do another part of the road, saying, well, if we do it over 3 years, can we do the whole road, right? Just not piecemeal everything, so that we get better quality of work. And that contractor is assured to have the contract, and they'll be able to ramp up their team to make sure they have the human resources and the team to do it as well. But right now, this year, roads, $55 million going into the roads. And that's something that we need to increase. We say that should be around 80 million. But again, that's a lot of money. That's a big jump. So again, how do we plan for that now to increase the ability to do more on our roads? And what happens too is often we just resurface, we don't fix the body of the road, right? The sand or the asphalt or not the asphalt, but certainly the granular that's been older, that's probably not even, maybe it's clay that was there before, right? So the quality there, so we just patch it, and it still heaves, right? But again, the cost is very, very high. And as I told you in the beginning, we have 3,700 kilometers of lanes, right, in our city. We have a huge city. So if I'll go to Azilda, they're gonna show me a bunch of roads too that are just very, very decaying. Then I'll go, the Kingsways or one of the major arteries. And the reason why they're kind of expanding that, because if you notice where they're expanding it's because it was going to turn into the Costco and up on the hill, and often there was jams there of traffic. So often when they do decide which roads to do, it's based on volume, right? So that's why I have a hard time to tell my friends in Azilda that the 20 cars that are driving on this road going to get done in the next 5 years, unfortunately, whereas the ones that have 5,000 a day, those are the ones that are going to get done, right? So as we need to prioritize, never easy, because everybody says, how about my road, right? My road, and I get that, and it's challenging, but at the same time, for me, it's making sure that we have a plan that is more transparent, more money attributed to the plan, and so always reviewing the practices and the best practices that we can with staff. So again, I believe the 4-year capital plan on roads will be, it's a good start. It's not the solution, it's not the end all, and that is the challenge that we are faced with as taxpayers, and certainly as elected councillors and mayor. Thank you.
I think we're getting down to this last couple of questions here. I think these two sort of fit together, and I think you sort of alluded to it in the last question. I don't think we need anything new. Pay attention to detail of what we already have now, and how does city decide priorities with respect to the city budget? So I guess they're sort of related.
Yeah.
Well, the city priorities, certainly we have councillors that you elect, right? That bring those ideas to the table, saying, and often what happens is they have these ideas saying, well, we want to see this project go forward, we have an idea, they build a business case, they ask the staff to bring a business case to council, and then there's an amount attached to it, and then in budget deliberations, we say if we want to fund it or not. So that's kind of how that works. So your advocacy, even as CARP saying, this is something that we want to advocate for, right? We want to see this change, and then council brings a business case forward to see how we make those changes or bring that program to be funded by council. Now, so that's kind of in a nutshell how things are done at City Hall or added to it. But certainly planning, as I said, I just find that in the past there was not enough planning and being transparent with here's what we're going to do in the next years, and not having a plan. That's why we're looking for 20 years ago to where we are now, and the fact that we have not put the money into the maintenance of some of the infrastructure that we have, and into the roads as well, as to what is needed. And if we can't afford it, at least we know here's what we're trying to do. I just feel as if the communication has not been there. That's why I'm going often. As this is my 8th town hall. Oh, sorry, I've done 8 town halls with the wards. Another 4 community engagement like this to hear from people, be able to in being able to share as well. And so for me, it's basically how do we ensure that as we go forward, that's communicated what the plan is, what can we afford, and why. That's why we get that level of service, right? This council, the mayor set the level of service, and it's up to staff to put it in. Right, to execute, and if they don't execute, certainly that is when there's a review, right? And every year we need to review that level of service that we provide, and that goes with the amount of money that we have to put into our services. Again, so that's kind of in a nutshell that approach. But for me, it's imperative that we put the money where we need to make sure that we maintain and we improve the infrastructure that we have. That is, when people come to town, that's what they see. Right, and that's where we live. And often when we see it not working out, being decrepit, well, we don't feel good about ourselves. We don't feel good about our city. So how do we change that narrative? What can we do? And that's important for me. Thank you.
So we only have 2 questions. These are, I don't know if you can answer these questions.
I'm trying.
But should all residential homes have a backup generator? Well, that's really a provincial thing.
It's also personal.
Yeah. So it's probably a good idea though.
I agree. I have one.
Because I know that I believe that most residential homes now have air conditioning. I think there's only a few that still need air conditioning, which is pretty basic, and I think COVID brought that to the fore. Here's a question. Why do we still have city office workers working from home?
So on that, during COVID, council, actually the staff, the executive team, along with staff and the union, decided to say, you know what, well, we had to work from home. During COVID, we added social distancing and that. So now that we're obviously out of the pandemic, there's a lot of habits that have been created by some staff, and they like that. Just not from a city's perspective, or a city hall perspective, but a lot of businesses, a lot of banks, a lot of different businesses, people like to work from home. So what we are right now instituting, not everybody works from home. There's actually a lot of more people than there was a year ago, I'm told, at City Hall, and that the whole executive leadership team has come back to City Hall as well. That was one of the first things I said, well, I want everybody back in their offices so that when I get up from my chair, I can go walk the hallway and I can ask the general manager a question, and I want him or her there. So they have come back. Now it's more of a hybrid system that we have. So basically some can work from home and some are in the office, and we're looking at more instituting that as well. And so, so basically these are conversations just not from our perspective, but the unions as well. We have unionized staff, as you know, and so that was almost ingrained, but it is not this type of working arrangement. But for now, I think having a hybrid arrangement that they're able to come in and to be flexible, and I think over a period of time, that's my opinion, I just see society going back to working in the office, because a lot of folks that I've talked to, they want that social interaction. They enjoy that social interaction. But it's not, but for other, again, different types of businesses and different types of roles, they don't need to be in the office. That's just a reality, right? They can work from home. But how do we make sure that we create that opportunity to socialize? Human beings are social, you know, we are social. That's why COVID was so hard on us. And the fact that this is your first meeting since, right? Am I correct? So the first AGM, I would say, right? Back. After 3 years, right? And it feels good to be together. And it feels good to go out of your home, to go to an event and go back and be social. And it's so important as human beings. That's how we function. And I see that for staff as well. Make sure that they're not alone, right? In their homes, but how do they socially interact and create those opportunities more and more and more. So it's a transition, and so that it is something that I've been trying to address since I first walked into City Hall.
I think we've done it. Now, mind you, you do have the questionnaire, which we ask you to fill in, leave on the table, or leave at the front desk before you leave. It's a questionnaire that we've put out for the last number of years, and the findings that we've had on it generally concern our infrastructure. And we know that many seniors are very fond of our present downtown library, and they want it to remain where it is. They're uncertain as to the art gallery, because there's some question there as to its ownership and what will actually happen to the art gallery, the Bell Mansion. Many people would like to see it as a museum, because we don't really have a museum like many other communities to reflect on our past. And I know I was talking to a young person who is a Sudburian, and I was just mentioning some basic facts to him. He said, "How come you know all that?" I said, "Not only because I'm old." I said it's because of the fact that you know, this is our history, and I don't know if we really acknowledge our history. And if the Bell Mansion, if it ever does become operational again, and an art gallery is established elsewhere, perhaps the Bell Mansion could be a museum that could attract people as a tourist attraction from all over the country. But notwithstanding, we would like to thank the mayor, who, and as we mentioned, we're going to present him with a CARP membership in a Zoomer magazine, so he can be officially a Zoomer. We know you're a Zoomer now, actually. But,
Pretty close.
yeah, but no age limit anymore. So we're going to, as I said, we're within 1 minute of letting you go.
Okay.
So we are seniors organized, aren't we? Hey. So we want to thank you very much for coming out to talk to the largest demographic in Sudbury. And We're there, as I'm sure you can call upon us at any time for our invaluable advice. But right now it's time for door prizes. Keith Sargent. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. We got to do our AGM first. I lost my AGM. Thank you, Mayor Lefebvre. Here it is. Okay, this is our AGM. Now, I really believe in short AGMs. So we've already done the AGM for you. It's on the sheet right here. And just a couple of things we have to do. We'd like to introduce you to our present board members. And Keith Argent, who called out the names. Keith, stand up. Hey, Keith Argent. Hey. And Valerie Lefebvre, who's our Treasurer Secretary, Irene Schickettle, Marianne Durkin, and myself, of course, John Lindsay. And our new board members will be elected next year at the AGM. So some of us may be retiring, is retired. And we have approval of new board members. And we're very, very happy and pleased that we had some individuals join our board, because we were getting to the point where we were a little disturbed about being able to carry on business without, but we have our new board members, and we're going to approve them right now. Paul F. Smith, Steve Prezarowski, and Pauline Prezarowski. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Stan and Pauline, did I do that right?
Yes.
I did it right. Oh, thank you, thank you. And moved by Keith Argent and seconded by Marianne Durkin. Show of hands for approval of our new board members. Hey, thank you. Now the financial report, I've laid it out there for you. And it should be noted, I just want to mention that when you sign up for CARP, you do it through our national office. We don't do local memberships anymore. It's all done through a national office. And they can do it on the phone, you can do it through the internet. And that's for CARP memberships and also for the Zoomer magazine. We do, with some faithful volunteers, we do sell tickets for the Hard of Hearing Home. And we've been raising money that way for